A cold and calculating businessman enters a hospital just to close contracts for heart surgery. But his routine is interrupted when a 6-year-old girl asks him where she can buy a new heart to save her mother. At that moment, he discovers that the hospitalized woman is someone who has made an irreversible mark on his past. And when he realizes who that child really is, his life and his fears are changed forever. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to like this video, and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The prestigious Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston was known for its cutting-edge cardiac care program, largely funded by Blake Enterprises. On a crisp autumn morning, William Blake sat in the hospital's administrative wing, reviewing contracts for his latest philanthropic venture, funding experimental heart surgeries for patients who had exhausted all conventional options. Dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit, his salt and pepper hair meticulously styled, William exuded the confidence of a man accustomed to making million-dollar decisions before breakfast. "These liability clauses need revision," he muttered to himself, making notes with his Mont Blanc pen. At 45, William had built Blake Enterprises from a small tech startup into a biomedical powerhouse. Numbers, data, and precise calculations were his language. Emotions were inefficient distractions he had learned to suppress long ago. Small voice interrupted his concentration. "Excuse me, sir. How much does a new heart cost?" William looked up, momentarily irritated by the interruption, to find a little girl with auburn hair and wide hazel eyes standing before him. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, wearing faded jeans and a pink sweater with a unicorn on it. In her small hands, she clutched a collection of crumpled bills and coins. "Pardon me?" William asked, his annoyance softening as he took in the earnestness in her expression. "A heart. For my mom," the girl explained, holding out her handful of money. "I've been saving. Is this enough?" William set down his pen, suddenly aware of the gravity in this child's question. "What's your name?" "Sophie," she replied, fidgeting with a wrinkled $5 bill. "Sophie Morgan." "Well, Sophie, hearts aren't exactly for sale. It's more complicated than that," William explained, trying to be gentle yet honest. "Why does your mum need a new heart?" "The doctors said her heart isn't working right anymore." Sophie's voice trembled slightly. "They said she needs a transplant, but there aren't any hearts available. I thought maybe if I paid for one." Her voice trailed off as she looked down at her meager savings. William felt something shift inside him, an unfamiliar discomfort that had nothing to do with business strategy or stock prices. "Where's your dad? Is he here with you?" Sophie shook her head. "I don't have a dad, it's just me and Mom. My grandma is taking care of my sick uncle in Chicago, so she couldn't come." William frowned. "You're here alone?" "The nurses check on me sometimes," Sophie shrugged, as though her independence at such a young age was perfectly normal. "But they're very busy, so I decided to find someone who sells hearts." The calculation was immediate in William's mind. A child this age shouldn't be wandering a hospital alone. He glanced at his watch, then at the contracts spread across the table. For the first time in years, the numbers seemed less important than the human equation before him. "Sophie, why don't I walk you back to your mum's room? Maybe I can talk to her doctors." Relief washed over the girl's face. "Really? You'll help us find a heart?" "I can't promise that," William said carefully, "but I might be able to help somehow." Sophie tucked her money into her pocket and reached for William's hand with unearned trust. Her small fingers wrapped around his, and William felt an unfamiliar protective instinct surge through him. They walked through the hospital corridors, Sophie chattering about her school, her favorite dinosaurs, and how her mum used to make the best chocolate chip pancakes before she got sick. William listened, responding with occasional nods, all while wondering what had possessed him to abandon his work for this impromptu hospital tour. "Mum's on the cardiology floor," Sophie explained, as they entered the elevator. "Floor 7. I know because 7 is my lucky number." When they reached the 7th floor, Sophie led William past nurses' stations and patient rooms until they reached room 718. Through the partially open door, William could see a woman lying in the hospital bed, attached to various monitors. Her auburn hair, the same shade as Sophie's, was spread across the pillow, her face pale but still bearing traces of beauty beneath the exhaustion. Something about her seemed familiar, but William couldn't place it. He hung back slightly as Sophie rushed to her mother's bedside. "Mom, I found someone who might help us get a new heart," Sophie announced triumphantly. The woman's eyes fluttered open, focusing first on her daughter with a weak smile, before shifting to the doorway where William stood. In an instant, her expression transformed from gentle affection to shocked recognition. "William?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. The sound of his name on her lips triggered a cascade of memories. William stared at her, recognition dawning like a slow-breaking wave. Catherine. Catherine Morgan had worked at Blake Enterprises 5 years, earlier as part of the research team developing medical devices. She had been brilliant, passionate about her work, and she had left the company suddenly, without explanation. William had barely registered her departure at the time, too consumed with expanding the business to concern himself with staff turnover. Sophie looked between them, confused. "You know each other?" Catherine's face had gone even paler. "Sophie, sweetie, could you please go ask the nurse for some water?" "But Mom, please Sophie, just for a minute." Once Sophie had reluctantly left the room, Catherine struggled to sit up. "What are you doing here?" "Your daughter found me downstairs. She was trying to buy you a new heart." William approached the bed, still processing this unexpected reunion. "Catherine, I had no idea you were ill." "There's a lot you don't know, William." Her voice held an edge of bitterness. William looked at Catherine, then at the door through which Sophie had disappeared. A simple calculation formed in his mind. Sophie's age, Catherine's abrupt departure from the company 5 years ago. The timing aligned with uncomfortable precision. "Sophie," he said slowly. "She's..." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "She's your daughter, William. Not that you ever cared to find out." The world seemed to tilt beneath William's feet. He gripped the rail of the hospital bed to steady himself. "That's impossible. You never told me." "I tried," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "I wrote you a letter explaining everything when I found out I was pregnant. I even requested a meeting with you several times. But you were always too busy. And then suddenly HR informed me my position had been eliminated." She looked away. "I got the message." William's mind raced back, trying to recall any letter, any meeting requests. Nothing came to mind. But Catherine had no reason to lie, especially not now. "Catherine, I swear to you, I never received any letter. I never knew." Before Catherine could respond, the door opened and Sophie bounded back in, followed by a nurse carrying a cup of water. The little girl climbed onto the chair beside her mother's bed, unaware of the seismic revelation that had just occurred. William stared at Sophie, seeing her now through transformed eyes. The hazel eyes that had seemed merely earnest before now reflected his own back at him. The determined set of her jaw, the analytical way she'd approached the problem of buying a heart, these weren't just random traits. They were pieces of him, living in this small person he'd never known existed. "Mr. Blake," the nurse said, recognizing him immediately, "I didn't realize you were visiting this wing today. Are you here about the new cardiology wing donation?" "No," William said, unable to take his eyes off Sophie. "I'm here about something much more important." As the nurse checked Catherine's vitals, William made a silent promise to himself. Whatever happened next, whatever complicated emotions and explanations lay ahead, one thing was certain. He would not walk away from this room the same man who had walked in. The precise, calculated life he had built was about to undergo a transformation that no spreadsheet could predict. William left the hospital in a daze, his mind racing with calculations and possibilities he'd never contemplated before. The autumn. Air felt sharp in his lungs as he loosened his tie, a rare gesture of discomfort for a man who prided himself on composure. He had exchanged numbers with Catherine and promised to return the next day, though the conversation had been strained and formal. Two strangers connected by a child neither had planned for. "A DNA test," he muttered to himself as he slid into the back seat of his waiting town car. "I need absolute certainty." "Sir?" his driver, Marcus, inquired. "Massachusetts General. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., William replied, then raised the privacy partition. Alone with his thoughts, William pulled out his phone and called the one person he trusted implicitly, his executive assistant, Victoria Hayes. She had been with him for over a decade, managing his schedule with military precision and unwavering loyalty. "Victoria, I need you to clear my schedule for the next week and find me every record of communication from Catherine Morgan from 5 years ago. Emails, meeting requests, letters, everything." "Catherine Morgan?" Victoria's voice held an unusual note of tension. "The research scientist who left. May I ask why?" "Just do it, Victoria." William ended the call and stared out the window at the Boston skyline, the gleaming towers of the financial district reflecting the late afternoon sun. By the time he reached his penthouse overlooking the Charles River, William had formulated a plan. He would request a paternity test first thing tomorrow, investigate Catherine's claims about the letter, and have his medical team review her case. Whatever the results, he would approach this situation like any other business challenge, methodically and dispassionately. But as he moved through his minimalist apartment, the space felt unusually empty. He paused at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching boats drift along the river below. For the first time, he noticed how the furnishings, all sleek leather and chrome, contained no personal touches, no photographs, no mementos, nothing that couldn't be replaced with a single phone call to his interior designer. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "No record of any letter in our files. No meeting requests in your calendar from that period. We'll keep searching." William frowned. Either Catherine was lying or someone had deliberately kept her communications from reaching him. Neither possibility sat well. The next morning, William arrived at the hospital at precisely 8:45 a.m. He had barely slept, his mind consumed with calculations of a different sort, what it might mean to be a father, how his life would change, whether he was even capable of the role. He found Catherine's room empty except for Sophie, who sat in a large armchair by the window, her small legs dangling as she drew in a sketchbook. She looked up when he entered, her face brightening. "You came back," she exclaimed, as if his return was an unexpected gift. "I said I would," William replied, surprised by the simple faith in her eyes. "Where's your mother?" "She's getting some tests. The doctors said they need pictures of her heart." Sophie held up her drawing, a colorful rendering of what appeared to be a woman with angel wings. "I'm making her a new heart, just in case. Do you think she'll like it?" William felt something tighten in his chest. "I'm sure she will." He sat in the chair opposite Sophie, noticing the dark circles under her eyes and her rumpled clothes. "Did you sleep here last night?" Sophie nodded. "I always sleep in the chair. The nurses bring me blankets." "Don't you have somewhere else to stay? School to attend?" "Grandma can't come get me yet. Mom says I can miss school for a while because this is more important." She returned to her drawing, adding vibrant red to the heart in her picture. "Are you Mom's friend from work? She doesn't talk about work much." William hesitated. "Yes, we worked together a long time ago." "Before I was born?" "Yes." Sophie studied him with a scrutiny that seemed beyond her years. "You look like the man in Mom's box." William leaned forward. "What box?" "Her special box. It has pictures and papers and stuff." Sophie returned to her drawing. "She doesn't know I found it. It's under her bed at home." Before William could probe further, a doctor entered the room, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Blake, I'm Dr. Levinson, head of cardiology. The nurse mentioned you were asking about Ms. Morgan's case." William stood, extending his hand. "Yes, I'd like a full briefing on her condition and treatment options." Dr. Levinson glanced at Sophie, then lowered his voice. "Perhaps we could discuss this in my office." "I'll be back soon, Sophie," William promised. In Dr. Levinson's office, the prognosis was laid out in stark terms. Catherine had dilated cardiomyopathy, a condition where the heart muscle weakens and can't pump blood efficiently. Her case was severe and progressing rapidly. "She needs a transplant," Dr. Levinson explained, "but as you know, hearts are in short supply and the waiting list is long. Without one, her prognosis is," He paused, glancing at his notes. Challenging. What about alternatives? Mechanical devices? Experimental treatments? William pressed. There is a clinical trial for a new ventricular assist device, the HeartSync, that could buy her time until a donor heart becomes available. But it's experimental, expensive, and not covered by insurance. Cost is not an issue, William said firmly. What's the timeline? Her condition is deteriorating, I'd say weeks, not months. William nodded, processing this information with the same analytical focus he applied to business decisions. I want her enrolled in that trial immediately. I'll handle the financial arrangements. Mr. Blake, Dr. Levinson said carefully, may I ask about your relationship with Ms. Morgan? Patient confidentiality. I believe I'm Sophie's father, William said, the word strange on his tongue. We're arranging testing to confirm. The doctor's expression softened. I see, in that case I should mention that Ms. Morgan has been resistant to the trial. She's concerned about the risks and doesn't want to burden Sophie with a lengthy recovery. I'll speak with her, William said, rising from his chair. Thank you, doctor. When William returned to Catherine's room, she had been brought back from her tests. She looked even more fragile than yesterday, her skin nearly translucent against the white hospital sheets. Sophie sat beside her on the bed, showing her the drawing. Catherine acknowledged him with a nod. Sophie, sweetie, could you go get me some ice chips from the nurse's station? Once Sophie had bounded out of the room, Catherine turned to William, her expression guarded. Did you get what you came for? Confirmation that you have a daughter. You never wanted? I've scheduled a DNA test, William replied, maintaining his composure. But that's not why I'm here today. I spoke with Dr. Levinson about the HeartSync trial. Catherine's eyes flashed. That's not your decision to make. It could save your life. It's experimental, risky, and what happens after? Sophie needs stability, not a mother who's in and out of hospitals for years. William moved closer to the bed. And you think leaving her an orphan is better? The word hung in the air between them, harsh and undeniable. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. You have no right to walk in here after 5 years and judge my decisions. I'm not judging, William said, softening his tone. I'm offering a solution. Let me help, Catherine. Why? Because you suddenly feel responsible? Or is this just another problem for the great William Blake to solve? She wiped at her eyes angrily. Where were you when I was 28 and pregnant and terrified? Where were you when Sophie had colic and cried for 3 months straight? Where were you for her first words, her first steps? William absorbed the accusations, recognizing their validity. I wasn't there, and I can't change that, but I'm here now. For how long? Catherine challenged. Until the novelty wears off? Until it interferes with your precious company? Before William could respond, Victoria appeared in the doorway, her expression tense. William, I need to speak with you immediately. He excused himself and followed Victoria to a quiet corner of the hallway. She clutched a tablet to her chest like a shield. What is it, Victoria? I found something. She handed him the tablet, which displayed a scanned letter dated 5 years earlier. This was in the archived correspondence files, not in the digital system, in the physical storage. William's eyes scanned the letter written in Catherine's neat handwriting. It explained her pregnancy, requested a meeting to discuss the situation, and expressed hope that they could find a way forward together. The letter had been marked received and date-stamped by the executive office. I never saw this, William said, his voice hollow. No, Victoria agreed, her face pale, because I intercepted it. William stared at her, understanding dawning, with cold clarity. You kept this from me? For 5 years you knew I had a child? Victoria's composure cracked. I was protecting you. You were in the middle of the Syntec merger. The board was already questioning your focus. A scandal, an illegitimate child with an employee, would have tanked the deal. That wasn't your decision to make, William said, his voice dangerously quiet. It was always about the company with you, William. Always the next deal, the next acquisition. I did what you would have wanted. You don't know what I would have wanted. Victoria stepped closer, lowering her voice. Don't I? In 15 years, Have you ever once mentioned wanting children? Have you ever shown interest in anything beyond Blake Enterprises? Her expression hardened. If I bring this to light now, how do you think the board will react? Your judgment will be questioned. The Meridian partnership could fall apart. William recognized the implicit threat in her words. Are you blackmailing me, Victoria? I'm reminding you of priorities you've spent a lifetime establishing. She straightened her blazer. I've made arrangements for the DNA test at 2 p.m. I'll meet you downstairs with the results of the quarterly reports. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking against the hospital floor with metronomic precision. William stood frozen, the tablet heavy in his hands. The letter represented not just Catherine's attempt to reach him, but a crossroads he'd never known existed. A path not taken because someone else had removed the signpost. He returned to Catherine's room, where Sophie had climbed back onto the bed and was reading aloud from a tattered picture book. The domestic tableau struck him with unexpected force. This was his family, hidden from him for years by calculation and chance. "Catherine," he said, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain, "we need to talk." William handed the tablet to Catherine, watching as her expression shifted from confusion to vindication, as she read her own words from 5 years ago. "You really didn't know," she whispered, looking up at him with new understanding. "No," William confirmed, his voice tight with controlled anger. Victoria intercepted it. "She made that decision, without my knowledge." Catherine set the tablet down, processing this revelation. "All this time I thought you dismissed me, us, as an inconvenience, a problem to be swept away." William pulled a chair close to her bedside, conscious of Sophie watching them with curious eyes. "I've never been the most approachable person," he admitted, "but I would have at least heard you out." "Would you have wanted her?" Catherine asked bluntly, nodding toward Sophie, who was now flipping through her book, pretending not to listen. The question struck William like a physical blow. Would he have? 5 years ago, consumed with expanding Blake Enterprises, viewing personal relationships as distractions from his ambitions, would he have embraced fatherhood? "I don't know," he answered honestly, "but I would have taken responsibility." Catherine nodded slowly, accepting his answer for what it was. Not the reassurance she might have wanted, but at least not a lie. "And now? What do you want now, William?" Before he could answer, a nurse entered to check Catherine's vitals. William used the interruption to suggest that Sophie join him for lunch in the hospital cafeteria, giving him a chance to know his daughter while allowing the medical staff to work. "Can I have chocolate pudding?" Sophie asked, slipping her small hand into his with surprising ease. "You can have 2, William replied, earning a small smile from Catherine as they left. The cafeteria was bustling with hospital staff and visitors. William guided Sophie through the line, watching with amusement as she carefully considered each option before making her selections. They settled at a corner table, William feeling oddly self-conscious in his tailored suit among the casual crowd. "Mom says you're a very important businessman," Sophie said, attacking her macaroni and cheese with enthusiasm. "What do you sell?" "Medical. Technology, mostly," William explained, simplifying his company's complex portfolio. "Devices that help doctors treat patients." "Like Mom's heart?" "Similar, yes." Sophie nodded, processing this information. "If you make heart machines, can you make one for Mom?" The directness of her question caught William off guard. "It's complicated, Sophie. The doctors are working on the best solution for your mother." "She's really sick," Sophie said matter-of-factly, though her eyes betrayed her fear. "I heard the doctors talking when they thought I was asleep. They said her heart is getting weaker." William felt wholly unprepared for this conversation. His usual analytical approach seemed inadequate for comforting a frightened child. "That's why we're looking at this special device, the heart sync. It could help your mother while she waits for a new heart." "But she doesn't want it," Sophie said, pushing her macaroni around her plate. "She says it costs too much money and might not work." "Money isn't a problem," William assured her. "I can help with that part." Sophie studied him with that unnervingly perceptive gaze. "Why do you want to help us?" The question hung between them, deceptively simple yet profoundly complex. William could have deflected, changed the subject, or offered a sanitized answer suitable for a child. Instead, he found himself wanting to be honest with this little girl who had his eyes. "Sophie, there's something you should know," he began, carefully. "A long time ago, before you were born, your mother and I knew each other. We worked together and we were close." Sophie set down her fork, giving him her full attention. "Like friends?" "More than friends," William clarified, feeling his way through unfamiliar emotional territory. "And there's a possibility, a strong possibility, that I might be your father." Sophie's eyes widened, but she didn't look shocked or upset. She looked curious. "Is that why you look like the man in Mom's box? Because you're him?" William nodded slowly. "I think so, yes. Do you want to be my dad?" The question was delivered with such straightforward innocence that it almost took William's breath away. He began, then stopped, realizing the weight of his answer. This wasn't a business negotiation or a strategic decision. This was a child, his child, asking if he wanted her. "Yes, Sophie. I would like to try to be your father." Sophie nodded, solemnly, as if they'd just concluded an important business agreement. "Okay, but you have to save Mom first. I need both of you." Back in Catherine's room, William found her sitting up in bed, reviewing medical documents. The nurse had left, and Catherine looked marginally better than earlier, though still alarmingly fragile. "Successful lunch date?" she asked, smiling as Sophie bounded onto the bed to show her the extra pudding cup she'd saved. "We had a talk," William said, meeting Catherine's eyes over Sophie's head, "about who I might be." Catherine's smile faded. "William, we agreed to wait for the test." "She already suspected," he explained. "She mentioned the pictures in your special box." Catherine blushed slightly. "Sophie Elizabeth Morgan, have you been snooping again?" Sophie shrugged unapologetically. "I was looking for Christmas presents." "In September. I like to plan ahead." Sophie's response was so logical, so reminiscent of William's own methodical approach to life, that he couldn't help but smile. Catherine caught the expression and seemed to soften. "Like father, like daughter," she murmured, then looked up at William. "The DNA test?" "Scheduled for this afternoon," he confirmed. "But regardless of the results, I want to help with your treatment, Catherine. The heart sync trial is experimental and risky," she finished for him. "Less risky than doing nothing," William countered. "Dr. Levinson believes you're an ideal candidate. The device could sustain your heart function until a donor heart becomes available." Catherine glanced at Sophie, who was now absorbed in a game on the tablet William had left behind. "Can you give us a minute, sweetie? Go show the nurses your drawing." Once Sophie had reluctantly left the room, Catherine turned to William, her expression fierce despite her weakness. "If something happens to me during this experimental procedure, what happens to Sophie? She goes into the system, or you suddenly become a full-time father after 5 minutes of getting to know her?" "She's my daughter," William said, surprised by the conviction in his voice. "Biologically, most likely, but being a father is more than DNA, William. It's school lunches and nightmares and fevers at 3 a.m. It's knowing that chicken nuggets have to be dinosaur-shaped or they won't be eaten. It's a lifetime commitment, not a charitable donation." William felt a flash of irritation. "You think I don't understand commitment? I've built a billion-dollar company from nothing. I've never walked away from a challenge in my life." "This isn't a business challenge," Catherine shot back. "Sophie is a person, not a project. You can't just throw money at her and expect results." The tension between them was interrupted by a gentle knock. Dr. Levinson entered, accompanied by another physician. "Ms. Morgan, Mr. Blake," Dr. Levinson greeted them. "This is Dr. Chen, the lead researcher on the heart sync trial. She'd like to discuss the procedure with you." Dr. Chen, a focused woman in her 40s, explained the heart sync device in detail, how it would be surgically implanted to assist Catherine's failing heart, the recovery process, and the potential complications. The statistics were sobering but not without hope. Without intervention, Dr. Chen concluded, your heart will continue to deteriorate. With the heart sink, we can stabilize your condition while you await transplant. It's not risk-free, but it offers the best chance at long-term survival. Catherine looked torn, her gaze shifting between the doctors and William. And the recovery? How long would I be incapacitated? Initial recovery takes about 2 weeks in the hospital, Dr. Chen explained. Then several months of rehabilitation and careful monitoring. You would need significant support during that time. Which she'll have, William interjected. Whatever Catherine needs, home care, rehabilitation, education support for Sophie, I'll arrange it all. Catherine's eyes flashed. Just like that? You'll rearrange your entire life? What about your company, your board meetings and international conferences? I have capable people who can handle the day-to-day operations, William responded, though, even as he said it, he realized how substantial a shift this would require. His entire identity had been wrapped up in Blake Enterprises for so long that he wasn't sure who he was without it. Dr. Levinson cleared his throat. Perhaps you two need time to discuss this privately. Dr. Chen can answer any additional questions tomorrow. The doctors excused themselves, leaving William and Catherine in tense silence. You don't have to do this, Catherine finally said, her voice softer. I don't expect you to upend your life for us. William moved to sit on the edge of her bed, closer than he'd allowed himself before. 5 years ago, I didn't get to make a choice about being in Sophie's life. Someone made that choice for me. I won't let that happen again. Catherine studied his face, searching for something. Sincerity, perhaps, or resolve. And if the DNA test shows she's not yours? The question caught William off guard. The possibility hadn't even occurred to him. Something about Sophie felt intrinsically familiar, as if he'd recognized her on some level he couldn't articulate. Then I'd still want to help, he found himself saying. But she is mine, Catherine. I know it. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I was so angry. With you for so long. I convinced myself you were this heartless corporate machine who couldn't be bothered with us. It was easier that way, to make you the villain in our story. I gave you reason enough, William acknowledged. I was distant even back then. Work always came first. And now? William considered the question seriously. His phone had been buzzing continuously with messages from the office, board members concerned about his sudden absence, projects awaiting his approval. For the first time in his career, he had let them all go unanswered. Now I'm sitting in a hospital room with my daughter's mother, trying to find a way forward, he answered honestly. Everything else can wait. Sophie reappeared in the doorway, escorted by a nurse. The lady at the desk says it's time for your special test, she announced to William. Is that the one to see if you're really my dad? William nodded, rising from the bed. That's right. I shouldn't be long. Sophie approached him, her expression suddenly serious. If you are my dad, do I have to call you Dad right away? Or can I practice first? The question caught William by surprise, and he found himself kneeling to meet her at eye level. You can call me William until you're ready for anything else. Sophie considered this, then nodded approvingly. Okay, good luck on your test. As William left for the DNA testing, he found himself in the unusual position of hoping the results would confirm what his heart already seemed to know, that Sophie Morgan was his daughter, and his precisely ordered life was about to become wonderfully, terrifyingly complicated. The paternity test results arrived with clinical efficiency, the E, next morning, confirming what William had already accepted as truth. Sophie was unquestionably his daughter. The DNA report sat on the small table in his hotel suite. He had checked out of his penthouse and into a room closer to the hospital. The scientific validation of a connection he'd felt from the moment Sophie had looked at him with those familiar hazel eyes. His phone rang, Victoria's name illuminating the screen for the 5th time that morning. He had avoided her calls since their confrontation, unsure whether his tightly controlled temper would hold if they spoke. With a deep breath, he answered. The board is demanding an explanation for your absence, Victoria said without preamble, her voice tense but professional. The Meridian Partnership paperwork needs your signature by end of day tomorrow, and the quarterly projections. Victoria, William interrupted. I need you to clear my schedule for the foreseeable future and delegate my immediate responsibilities. To Michael, effective immediately, I'm taking a leave of absence. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. A leave of absence? William, you haven't taken a vacation in 12 years, let alone… This isn't a negotiation, he cut in. I'm informing you of my decision. Because of them? Victoria's voice turned bitter. You've known this child for what, 2 days? And you're throwing away everything we've built? William noted her choice of words, "we've built," revealing more than she perhaps intended about how she viewed their professional relationship. I'm not throwing anything away, he replied evenly. I'm attending to my daughter and her mother, who need significant medical intervention. Blake Enterprises will survive without my physical presence for a while. The board won't accept this, not without explanation. Then I'll provide one. Schedule a video conference for this afternoon. After ending the call, William gathered the DNA report and headed to the hospital. He found Catherine's room empty, except for a nurse changing the bedding. Ms. Morgan is in radiology for pre-surgical imaging, the nurse explained. The little one is with Child Life Services in the playroom on the 5th floor. William thanked her and made his way to the children's playroom, where he found Sophie sitting at a small table with colored pencils and paper, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration as she drew. The sight was so ordinary, yet so extraordinary in its implications for his life, that William paused in the doorway, suddenly overwhelmed. A child life specialist approached him with a smile. Are you Sophie's father? She mentioned you might be coming. Father? The word still felt foreign on his ears. Yes, he answered, the confirmation surprisingly easy. Yes, I am. Sophie looked up at the sound of his voice and waved him over. Excitedly, William, come see what I'm making. He crossed the room and examined her artwork, a colorful drawing of 3 figures holding hands in front of what appeared to be a house. Is this us? He asked. Sophie nodded. You, me, and Mom, after she gets better and comes home. Do you like it? It's perfect, William said, genuinely, moved by the simple, hopeful image. May I keep it when you're finished? Sure, I can make more. Sophie returned to her coloring, adding details to the house. Mom's getting more pictures of her heart today. She said it's so the doctors can fix it better. William sat beside her, feeling awkwardly large in the child-sized chair. That's right. Has anyone explained to you what's going to happen with your mum's surgery? Sophie nodded solemnly. The doctors are going to put a special machine in her chest to help her heart work better. She'll be asleep for a while, and then she'll need to rest a lot. But after that, she might get to come home. She looked up at him. Are you going to stay with us when she comes home? The question was innocent but loaded with implications. William had been so focused on the immediate medical crisis that he hadn't fully considered the practical logistics of what came next. We'll figure that out together, he promised. Right now, the most important thing is helping your mum get better. And where will I stay during her operation? The nurses said I can't sleep in her room while she's in the special care place. William realized this was another detail that hadn't been addressed. You'll stay with me, he said, the decision forming even as he spoke the words. I've got a hotel room nearby, but I can find us a more suitable place. Sophie considered this proposal with surprising seriousness. Do you know how to make pancakes? Mom always makes them on Saturdays. I don't, William admitted. But I can learn. This seemed to satisfy Sophie, who returned to her drawing. William watched her, marveling at her resilience and practical approach to the situation. At 6 years old, she was navigating her mother's serious illness with a steadiness that shamed many adults. Later, when Catherine returned to her room, William shared the DNA results, though they felt like a mere formality at this point. Catherine nodded, unsurprised. I never had any doubt, she said quietly. She has your eyes, your determination. And your strength, William added, watching as Sophie arranged her stuffed animals on the windowsill. She's extraordinary, Catherine. You've done an amazing job raising her. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to hate you for not being there, for leaving me to do it all alone. But I couldn't let Sophie grow up with that bitterness. She wiped at her eyes. Besides, she's so much like you sometimes that it was like having a piece of you with me anyway. William felt a complex wave of emotions: regret for the years lost, gratitude for Catherine's grace in raising their daughter, and a fierce, protective love that had grown with startling speed. "I've decided to take a leave of absence from Blake Enterprises, indefinite. Whatever happens with the surgery, with your recovery, I want to be fully present for it, for both of you." Catherine looked surprised. "William, your company is your life. You can't just walk away." "I'm not walking away, I'm delegating, there's a difference." He sat on the edge of her bed. "The board meeting is in an hour. I'll join virtually from here." Catherine studied him. "You're serious about this?" "Completely." She reached for his hand, the gesture tentative but meaningful. "Thank you, not just for the financial support, but for being here, for wanting to know her." The board meeting went about as William had expected. Initial shock and concern gave way to pragmatic discussion of interim leadership and protocol for urgent decisions. Michael Chen, his COO, would assume day-to-day operations, with William available for critical consultations. Only Victoria remained visibly upset, her expression tightly controlled, but her disapproval evident in every clipped response. When the meeting concluded, William turned, his attention to practical matters. He arranged for the rental of a furnished apartment near the hospital, engaged a pediatric psychologist to help Sophie cope with her mother's illness, and consulted with Dr. Chen about the heart sink procedure scheduled for the following week. 3. Days later, William found himself helping Sophie pack a small suitcase in Catherine's hospital room. The heart sink surgery was scheduled for the next morning, and Catherine would be moved to pre-op shortly. "Don't forget Astro," Catherine reminded them, pointing to a well-worn stuffed astronaut on her bedside table. "He helps with nightmares." Sophie carefully tucked the toy into her backpack. "And you'll have Starlight," she said, placing a matching astronaut doll next to her mother. "So we'll still be connected even when you're sleeping." William watched the exchange, touched by the ritual and struck by how quickly his life had transformed. A week ago, his concerns had revolved around quarterly projections and strategic acquisitions. Now, his priorities centered on dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets and ensuring his daughter felt secure during her mother's surgery. When a nurse arrived to escort Catherine to pre-op, the moment suddenly became painfully real. Sophie clung to her mother, fighting tears. "It's just for a little while," Catherine assured her, though her own voice trembled. "And then I'll be stronger, and we can go home together." "Promise?" Sophie asked, her small face fierce with hope and fear. "I promise to try my very hardest," Catherine answered honestly. She looked up at William, her eyes conveying what words couldn't, the trust she was placing in him, the fear that she might not keep her promise to their daughter. William stepped forward. "We'll be right here waiting for you," he assured her. "Both of us." After Catherine was wheeled away, Sophie stood motionless in the suddenly empty room, her small shoulders rigid with the effort of being brave. William knelt beside her, unsure what to say but knowing she needed something from him: comfort, reassurance, strength. "It's okay to be scared," he said gently. "I'm scared too." Sophie looked at him in surprise. "You are? But you're a grown-up." "Grown-ups get scared, especially when someone they care about is sick." Sophie considered this. "Mom says it's brave to do things, even when you're scared." "Your mom is very wise." William held out his hand. "What do you say we be brave together?" Sophie slipped her hand into his, and they walked out of the hospital room, father and daughter united by worry and hope. The apartment William had rented was modest by his standards, but comfortable and child-friendly, with a second bedroom, already prepared for Sophie. He had hired a personal assistant to stock the kitchen and purchase essentials for a 6-year-old girl, including bedding with dinosaurs, Sophie's preference according to Catherine, and a selection of books and toys. That evening, after an attempt at making dinner, pasta, relatively successful, and helping Sophie with her bedtime routine, less successful as he discovered the complexities of detangling hair and the specific temperature requirements for bathwater, William sat on the edge of Sophie's bed for a story. Mom always does different voices for the characters, Sophie informed him as he opened the book she had selected. William, who had presented to boards of directors and negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, felt oddly intimidated by this small audience of one. "I'll do my best," he promised. He was halfway through the story, doing his awkward best with the voices, when Sophie interrupted. "William, if the doctors fix Mum's heart, will you still want to be my dad?" The question caught him off guard. "Of course I will. Why would you think otherwise?" Sophie fidgeted with Astro the astronaut. "Because you didn't before. Want to be my dad?" "So I mean." The simple observation pierced William's carefully constructed explanations. He set the book aside. "Sophie, I didn't know about you before. If I had known, I would have been your dad from the very beginning." "But what if you don't like being a dad? What if you decide it's too hard?" William recognized in her question the fear that had been lurking beneath her practical exterior, that his presence in her life was conditional, temporary, tied to her mother's illness rather than a permanent commitment to her. "Being your dad isn't something I'm trying out," he said carefully. "It's who I am now. And yes, some parts might be hard because I'm still learning, but that doesn't mean I'll stop." He thought for a moment, trying to find words a 6-year-old would understand. "It's like when you learn to ride a bike. You might fall down sometimes, but you don't give up, right?" Sophie nodded, seeming to accept this analogy. "Mom says I'm stubborn like you, that I never give up once I decide to do something." William smiled. "Then you know I won't give up on being your dad because I've decided to do it, and apparently we're both very stubborn about our decisions." This earned him a small smile. "Okay, but you still need to practice the voices." "I'll work on that," William promised, picking up the book again. Later, after Sophie had finally fallen asleep, William sat in the living room with his laptop, reviewing Catherine's medical information and research on the heart sync device. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Board-approved interim leadership structure. Chen handling Meridian partnership. Still think you're making a mistake. Call when you're ready to discuss return timeline." William set the phone aside without responding. For the first time in his career, Blake Enterprises felt distant, less urgent than the small girl sleeping down the hall and the woman whose surgery would begin in just hours. He had always defined himself by his work, his success, his strategic brilliance, his unwavering focus. Now those identities were being supplanted by new ones: father, co-parent, caregiver. It should have terrified him, this seismic shift in his carefully ordered life. Instead, as he listened to the soft sounds of his daughter's breathing through the partially open bedroom door, William felt something he hadn't experienced in years: the quiet certainty that he was exactly where he needed to be. Catherine's surgery lasted nearly 8 hours. William and Sophie spent most of that time in the hospital's surgical waiting area, where Sophie alternated between coloring, playing games on the tablet William had purchased for her, and asking when her mother would wake up. William checked, his watch compulsively, mentally tracking the stages of the procedure as Dr. Chen had outlined them. "Are we having lunch soon?" Sophie asked, setting aside her coloring book. "Mum says I get cranky when I'm hungry." William glanced at his watch, startled to realize it was well past noon. "Of course. Would you like to go to the cafeteria, or should I find something better nearby?" Sophie considered the question with characteristic seriousness. "The cafeteria has pudding cups." A compelling argument, William agreed, grateful for her uncomplicated priorities. As they walked hand in hand to the elevator, William noticed a familiar figure approaching: Victoria, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, her expression determined. He stopped, instinctively positioning himself slightly in front of Sophie. "William," Victoria greeted him, her gaze flickering briefly to Sophie before returning to him. "We need to talk." "I'm in the middle of something," he replied, his tone making it clear that something was far more important than whatever she had come to discuss. Victoria glanced at Sophie again. "Hello there. My name is Victoria. I work with with William." Sophie regarded her with open curiosity. I'm Sophie. My mum is getting a heart machine today. Victoria's composed expression faltered slightly. Yes, I heard about that. I hope everything goes well. It will, Sophie said with the firm confidence of a child. The doctors are very smart, and William made sure she got the special device. William placed a protective hand on Sophie's shoulder. We were just heading to lunch, Victoria. Whatever it is can wait. Victoria straightened, recovering her professional demeanor. The Chen merger documents arrived this morning. They need your signature before we can proceed. She held out a leather portfolio. It will only take a moment. William felt a flash of irritation. You flew across the country for signatures that could have been sent electronically? Some matters require a personal touch, Victoria replied smoothly. And the board was concerned about your state of mind given recent developments. The implication was clear. She was here to assess the situation and report back. William took the portfolio. I'll review these and have them messengered to the office. Now, if you'll excuse us. Actually, Victoria said, stepping closer, I was hoping we could discuss the timeline for your return. The Westfield acquisition is approaching a critical phase, and your presence would... Victoria, William interrupted, conscious of Sophie listening intently beside him. This isn't the time or place. I'll contact you next week. Victoria's professional smile thinned. William, you've built this company from nothing. Everything you are is tied to Blake Enterprises. This domestic experiment is admirable, but let's be realistic about your priorities. William felt Sophie's small hand tighten in his. My priorities are standing right beside me and lying in an operating room upstairs. Blake Enterprises will continue. Without my physical presence now, my daughter and I are going to lunch. He guided Sophie past Victoria, whose expression had hardened into something between shock and contempt. As they stepped into the elevator, Sophie looked up at him. She doesn't like me, she observed quietly. William knelt to her level. It's not about you, Sophie. Victoria is upset with me for changing my plans. Because you're staying with me instead of working? That's right, Sophie considered this. Is your company going to break because you're not there? The question, so childlike in its directness yet so perceptive, made William smile. No. Other people can run things while I'm away. Then why is she so mad? William hesitated, unsure how to explain the complex dynamics of his relationship with Victoria to a 6-year-old. Sometimes adults get upset when things don't go the way they expected. Victoria, thought I would always put work first because that's what I've always done before. But now you're putting me and Mom first? Yes. Sophie nodded, apparently satisfied with this explanation. Good, because we need you more than your company does right now. The simplicity of her assessment struck William powerfully. For 2 decades, he had operated under the assumption that Blake Enterprises couldn't function without his constant attention, that he was irreplaceable, essential. Yet in just a week, operations had continued smoothly in his absence. Meanwhile, the little girl beside him and her mother truly did need him in a way no corporation ever could. After lunch, they returned to the surgical waiting area. 2 more hours passed before Dr. Chen finally appeared, still in surgical scrubs, looking tired but satisfied. The procedure was successful, she announced. We've implanted the heart sync device and it's functioning properly. Catherine is in recovery now. William felt a wave of relief so intense it was almost physical. When can we see her? She'll be in the ICU for at least 24 hours, Dr. Chen explained. You can have a brief visit once she's stabilized, but she'll be heavily sedated. She knelt to Sophie's level. Your mum is doing very well. She's very strong. Like me, Sophie said confidently. We're both brave. Dr. Chen smiled. Exactly. Like you. She stood and turned to William. The next 72 hours are critical. We'll be monitoring her closely for any signs of rejection or infection. Later that evening, they were allowed a 5-minute visit with Catherine in the ICU. She lay motionless, connected to a constellation of monitors and tubes, her skin almost as pale as the sheets beneath her. Sophie approached the bed cautiously, her eyes wide. She looks like Sleeping Beauty, she whispered. William lifted her so she could see better. Remember what Dr. Chen said. The medicine is helping her sleep so her body can heal. Sophie nodded, then leaned forward to plant a gentle kiss on her mother's forehead. That's so she knows we're here, she explained to William. Even when people are sleeping, they can feel kisses. The nurse monitoring Catherine's vitals smiled. Look at that, she said, pointing to one of the screens where a steady rhythm pulsed. Her heart rate improved when you kissed her. I think she knows you're here. Sophie beamed at this confirmation, and William felt a lump form in his throat at the simple, profound connection between mother and daughter. The next 3 days established a new routine. Mornings began with William making breakfast. His pancake skills were improving, though still not up to Sophie's exacting standards, before they headed to the hospital for a brief visit with Catherine. Afternoons were filled with activities to distract Sophie: trips to the Boston Children's Museum, the New England Aquarium, and the public garden, where the swan boats provided a temporary respite from hospital corridors and medical terminology. In tea. The evenings, they would visit Catherine again, staying longer as she gradually became more alert. On the 4th day post-surgery, she was moved out of the ICU to a regular room, and Sophie was finally allowed to sit on the edge of her bed, carefully avoiding the incision site as she showed her mother drawings and recounted their daily adventures. You took her to the aquarium? Catherine asked William when Sophie stepped out with a nurse to get a snack. You hate crowds. I'm adapting, he replied with a small smile. Besides, she wanted to see the penguins. Catherine studied him, her expression softening. You're different with her. I never thought I'd see William Blake willingly explaining mollusk habitats to a 6-year-old. I may have Googled some facts in advance, he admitted. I didn't want to disappoint her with insufficient knowledge. Catherine laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at her incision. Of course you did. Always prepared. William moved closer to the bed. How are you feeling? Really? Like I've been hit by a truck, she admitted. But the doctors say the device is working exactly as it should. My cardiac output has already improved. She glanced toward the door. How is she really doing? She puts on a brave face for me, but this has to be terrifying for her. She's incredible, William said honestly. Resilient, practical. She asks a lot of questions about your condition, very specific technical questions that sometimes stump even the doctors. But she has nightmares sometimes. Calls for you. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I hate that she's going through this, that she has to be so strong. She gets that from you, William said quietly. Her strength. A comfortable silence fell between them, different from the tense, awkward pauses of their earlier interactions. Catherine broke it first. What happens when I'm discharged? The recovery is going to be months, not weeks. I've been looking at houses, William said. Rentals for now. Something near your apartment so Sophie can still attend her school, but with enough space for a recovery room on the ground floor and a home health aide. Catherine looked surprised. You've thought this through. I have a tendency to plan, he reminded her with a small smile. The doctors estimate you'll be here for another 2 weeks, minimum. That gives us time to find something suitable and move your things. And you? Catherine asked hesitantly. Where will you be? The question hung between them, laden with implications beyond practical living arrangements. William had been so focused on the immediate crisis that he hadn't fully articulated his long-term intentions even to himself. I want to be part of Sophie's life, he said carefully. Her real part, not just weekends and holidays, and I want to help you, Catherine, not just financially, but actually be there, for both of you. Catherine's expression was guarded. Out of obligation? No, William answered honestly, because I've spent 20 years building a company while neglecting everything else that matters. Because Sophie is extraordinary, and I've already missed too much. And because you and I once had something worth exploring, before work and circumstance pulled us apart. Catherine looked away, blinking back tears. William, I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago, and neither are you. We can't just pick up where we left off. I'm not suggesting that, he assured her. I'm suggesting we start something new, something that includes Sophie and accounts for who we are now." Before Catherine could respond, Sophie returned, clutching a juice box and a packet of graham crackers. The serious conversation was set aside. As she climbed carefully onto the bed, eager to tell her mother about the harbour seals they had seen at the aquarium. That night, after Sophie had fallen asleep, William sat on the balcony of their temporary apartment, contemplating the conversation with Catherine. His phone vibrated with an incoming call. Michael Chen, his COO. "William, I've been reviewing the quarterly projections," Michael began without preamble. "The board is pushing for cost-cutting measures in R&D, but I think that's short-sighted, given the Meridian Partnership's focus on innovation." William listened as Michael outlined the situation, offering guidance where needed, but ultimately deferring to his colleague's judgment. "You're handling things well," he concluded. "I trust your decision on this." "Thanks," Michael sounded relieved. "How are things there?" "Victoria returned in quite a state." William sighed. "Catherine's surgery went well. She's recovering, but it will be a long process. I'll be staying in Boston indefinitely." There was a pause on the line. "You know, when you first told me about this situation, I thought it was some kind of midlife crisis. The William Blake I know doesn't just walk away from the company for personal matters. Maybe the William Blake you know has been missing some essential perspectives," William replied. "Maybe," Michael agreed. "For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is right. I have 3 kids of my own. No business success compensates for missing their lives." After ending the call, William remained on the balcony, contemplating how drastically his priorities had shifted in just 2 weeks. The William Blake who had walked into Massachusetts General to review funding contracts would never have recognized the man he was becoming, a father making pancakes, visiting aquariums, reading bedtime stories, and contemplating a life organized around family rather than corporate achievement. A soft sound from inside drew his attention. Sophie stood in the doorway in her dinosaur pajamas, clutching Astro the astronaut. "I had a bad dream," she said, her voice small. William crossed to her immediately. "Do you want to talk about it?" She shook her head. "Can I just sit with you for a while?" "Of course." He led her to the couch and sat beside her, awkwardly at first, then more naturally as she leaned against him. "William?" she asked after a few minutes of silence. "When Mom comes home, will you stay with us?" The question echoed his earlier conversation with Catherine. "I'd like to," he answered honestly. "Would that be okay with you?" Sophie nodded against his shoulder. "I think 3 is better than 2, and Mom smiles more when you're there." "Does she?" William hadn't noticed this, too focused on Catherine's medical condition to observe such subtle shifts. "Uh-huh. Even when she's pretending to be mad at you, her eyes still smile." Sophie yawned widely. "I think she likes you." William smiled, touched by her simple assessment. "I like her too, and I like you very much." "Good," Sophie murmured, her eyelids growing heavy. "Because we like you too." As Sophie drifted back to sleep against him, William realized that he had spent decades calculating risk and return in business terms, always seeking the optimal outcome with maximum efficiency. Yet this new equation, one that involved heart conditions and bedtime stories, school schedules and rehabilitation plans, defied his usual analytical approach. It was messier, less predictable, filled with variables he couldn't control, and somehow it felt more valuable than any deal he had ever closed. The colonial-style house William found in Cambridge had a wraparound porch, a spacious first-floor bedroom with an attached bathroom for Catherine, and a backyard with a maple tree, perfect for the swing set he had impulsively ordered. It was a 15-minute drive from Sophie's elementary school, and less than half an hour from the hospital for Catherine's follow-up appointments. On paper, it was the optimal solution to their temporary housing needs. In reality, it represented something far more significant, a deliberate step toward the family life William had never imagined for himself. "It's too much, William," Catherine protested when he showed her photos on his tablet. 3 weeks had passed since her surgery, and though she remained in the hospital, her strength was gradually returning. We could manage in my apartment with some adjustments. Your apartment is a third-floor walk-up, William reminded her. The doctors say no stairs for at least 2 months. Besides, I've only leased it for 6 months. It's a solution, not a commitment. Catherine studied the images again, lingering. On the photo of the bedroom that would be Sophie's, larger than her current room with a window seat overlooking the backyard. She'll love that window seat. She's always wanted one for reading. William felt a small surge of satisfaction. He had chosen that particular house specifically because of that feature, remembering how Sophie had pointed out a similar window seat in one of her storybooks. The house is furnished, but I thought Sophie might want to bring some things from your apartment to make it feel more like home. Catherine's expression softened. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I try to be thorough, William replied, then hesitated. Catherine, I know this is all happening very quickly. If you're uncomfortable with any of it, with me being so involved, we can discuss alternatives. Catherine reached for his hand, the gesture still new, but increasingly natural. Between them, no, it's not that. It's just overwhelming. A month ago, I was trying to figure out how to prepare Sophie for the worst. Now I'm looking at a house with a porch and a yard, with you planning for a future I wasn't sure I'd have. Her eyes grew distant. I'm afraid to trust it, to believe that any of this is permanent. William understood her hesitation. He had spent his adult life avoiding permanent attachments, viewing them as liabilities rather than assets. Now he found himself actively seeking one. I can't promise that everything will work out perfectly, he said honestly, but I can promise that I'm committed to trying, to being Sophie's father and to exploring what might be possible between us. Catherine studied him. The great William Blake embracing uncertainty. That's new. Everything about this is new, he admitted, but it feels right in a way that nothing else has. 2 days later, William and Sophie spent the afternoon moving some of their belongings from Catherine's apartment to the new house. Sophie directed the operation with surprising authority, instructing William exactly how her stuffed animals should be arranged on her new bed and which books deserved prime positioning on the shelves. Mom's favorite blanket goes on her bed, Sophie explained, carefully folding a soft blue throw. She says it makes everywhere feel like home. William added it to the box of Catherine's personal items. What else does she need to feel at home? Sophie considered the question seriously. Her teacup, the one with the birds on it, and her special pillow, and pictures of me. They worked together, Sophie's chatter filling the small apartment as she shared stories about each item they packed, the mug she had painted for Mother's Day, the plant they had grown from a seed, the wind chime that sang them to sleep on, summer nights. Through her words, William glimpsed the life Catherine had built for them, modest in material terms, but rich in small joys and meaningful rituals. What about your stuff? Sophie asked as they loaded the last box into the SUV William had rented. From your house? I don't have much to bring, William replied, realizing how true this was. His penthouse, though expensively furnished, contained few personal items. Beyond his clothes and some art he had purchased primarily as investments. Sophie frowned. But then it won't feel like your home too. Her concern touched him. I suppose I'll need to get some things that make it feel like home. Like what? William considered the question, unsure how to answer. What objects held meaning for him? What items defined his sense of home? The question itself revealed how narrowly he had been living. I'm not sure, he admitted. Maybe you can help me figure that out. Sophie nodded solemnly. We can make a list. That's what Mom does when she has a big problem to solve. The following week brought Catherine's discharge from the hospital. William arranged for a private ambulance service to transport her to the house, where a hospital bed had been temporarily installed in the first-floor bedroom alongside regular furniture. A home health nurse named Diane would be staying in a small guest room off the kitchen, providing round-the-clock care for the first 2 weeks. Welcome home, William said, as he wheeled Catherine into the house, Sophie dancing excitedly ahead of them. Mom, come see everything. We put all your special things in your room and William got fresh flowers for every room and there's a swing set in the backyard. Catherine smiled at her daughter's enthusiasm. Slow down, sweetie. I need to take things one step at a time. The transition was not without challenges. Catherine, fiercely independent by nature, struggled with her temporary limitations and the constant presence of the nurse. William, accustomed to controlling his environment, had to adapt to the messiness of family life and the unpredictability of Catherine's recovery. Sophie, though resilient, had moments of anxiety about her mother's condition, sometimes crawling into William's bed in the middle of the night after a nightmare. Yet, amid the challenges, a new rhythm gradually emerged. Mornings began with William making breakfast before driving Sophie to school. He would return to work remotely from the house, available to assist Catherine or confer with her doctors as needed. In the afternoons, he would pick Sophie up from her school, and they would often work together on her homework at the kitchen table while Catherine rested. Evenings became William's favorite time. They would eat dinner together in Catherine's room, Sophie chattering about her day while William and Catherine exchanged glances over her head, sometimes amused, sometimes concerned, increasingly warm. After dinner, William would read to Sophie while Catherine listened, her eyes often drifting closed before the story ended. One evening, about 3 weeks after Catherine's homecoming, William returned from putting Sophie to bed to find Catherine, sitting up in her regular bed, which had recently replaced the hospital bed as her condition improved. "She's finally asleep," William reported. 3 stories and 2 glasses of water later, Catherine smiled. "She's stalling. She does that when she's worried." "About what?" "Us. This situation, whether it's permanent." Catherine patted the edge of the bed, inviting him to sit. "Children are perceptive. She knows we're still figuring things out." William sat beside her, careful not to disturb the pillows supporting her posture. "And what are we figuring out, exactly?" Catherine met his gaze directly. "What happens when I'm well enough not to need your help anymore? Whether this is a temporary arrangement or something more." The question had been hovering between them for weeks, acknowledged but not directly addressed. William had been giving Catherine space to recover, not wanting to pressure her when she was vulnerable. But her direct approach now, so characteristic of the woman he had first been drawn to years ago, deserved an equally direct response. "I want something more," he said simply. "I know it's complicated. We have history, but we're also virtual strangers in many ways. We became parents without going through any of the usual stages of a relationship. But I care about you, Catherine, I always did." Catherine's expression was guarded. "5 years ago you cared about me, but not enough to make me a priority. How do I know this isn't just guilt or obligation?" "Because I've changed," William said. Or perhaps it's more accurate to say that circumstances have forced me to recognize what actually matters. For years, I measured success by the growth of Blake Enterprises. Now, I measure it by whether Sophie tells me about her day at school, or whether you smile when I walk into the room. He took her hand. "I'm not the same man who put work above everything else. I don't want to be that man anymore." Catherine studied their joined hands. "I've changed too. Becoming a mother, facing this health crisis. I'm not the same woman who used to work 70-hour weeks in your research department." She looked up at him. "I need to know that you're interested in who I am now, not who I was then." "I am," William assured her. "Every day I learn something new about you that fascinates me. How you always sing off-key when you help Sophie with her bath. How you fold the corners of pages in books instead of using bookmarks. How you're somehow both fiercely practical and hopelessly romantic at the same time." Catherine blushed slightly. "You've been paying attention." "I've been making up for lost time," William corrected. He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to take you on a proper date, when you're feeling up to it." "A date?" Catherine laughed. "William, we live together. We're raising a child together. Isn't it a little late for dating?" "Actually, I think we're doing things out of order," William replied with a smile. "Most people date, then move in together, then have children. We've reversed the process, so now we need to go back and fill in the missing steps." Catherine's expression softened. "A date sounds nice, but nothing fancy. I'm not up to anything elaborate yet." "I'll keep it simple," William promised. "Just the two of us getting to know each other again." The opportunity came the following weekend. Sophie had been invited to a sleepover at her best friend Emma's house, her first overnight, away since Catherine's surgery. After William dropped her off, reassuring her multiple times that her mother would be fine without her for one night, he returned home to find Catherine dressed in a simple blue dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. "You look beautiful," he said, suddenly feeling as nervous as a teenager. "Thank you," Catherine smiled, a hint of color in her cheeks. "So what's the plan for this simple date?" William had spent days considering options, wanting to create an evening that would be special, but not too taxing for Catherine. "Dinner on the porch," he announced. "The weather is perfect, and you've been saying you wanted to spend more time outside." He had arranged for Catherine's favorite restaurant to deliver a meal, which he now set up on the small table on the porch, complete with candles and flowers. As they ate, conversation flowed more easily than either of them had expected, moving from reminiscences about their earlier days working together to discussions of Sophie's education, their own childhoods, and even tentative plans for the future. "I've been thinking about going back to work part-time once I'm stronger," Catherine mentioned as they shared a dessert. "Not at Blake Enterprises, obviously, but somewhere I can use my research background. I miss it." "You were brilliant at it," William acknowledged. "Any lab would be lucky to have you." "What about you?" Catherine asked. "Will you go back to running Blake Enterprises full-time eventually?" William had been contemplating this question himself. "Not the way I did before," he decided. "I've been working remotely for weeks now, and the company hasn't collapsed. Michael is proving himself more than capable as acting CEO. I'm thinking of making that arrangement permanent, keeping my role as chairman, but stepping back from day-to-day operations." Catherine looked surprised. "That's a significant change. Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything," William replied. "The company was consuming my entire life. I don't want to miss any more of Sophie's childhood, and I don't want to miss this chance with you." Later, as William helped Catherine back to her room, a comfortable silence fell between them. At her door she turned to him, her expression soft in the dim hallway light. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "It was perfect." William reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture tender and hesitant. "Catherine, I know we still have a lot to figure out, but I want you to know." She rose slightly on her toes and pressed a gentle kiss to his lips, silencing him. The kiss was brief, but held a promise of more to come. "I know," she whispered. "Me too." That night, as William lay in bed, he found himself thinking about the conversation he'd had with Sophie weeks earlier about what made a place feel like home. He had never found an answer that satisfied him. No object or possession seemed significant enough to represent home to him. Now, with the house quiet around him and the memory of Catherine's kiss still lingering, he realized that home wasn't found in things at all. It was in Sophie's laughter, as she swung higher and higher on her new swing set. It was in the way Catherine's eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled. It was in the three of them around the dinner table, sharing stories and creating new memories. For the first time in his adult life, William Blake felt completely at home, not because of where he was, but because of who he was with. 4 months after Catherine's surgery, the leaves in Cambridge had turned to brilliant golds and reds, carpeting the yard of their rented house and providing endless entertainment for Sophie, who, delighted in jumping into the piles William dutifully raked each weekend. Catherine's recovery had progressed steadily. She now moved through the house without assistance, attended Sophie's school events, and had even begun consulting part-time for a medical research firm that allowed her to work primarily from home. The heart-sync device continued to function perfectly, maintaining her cardiac output while she remained on the transplant list. Though the uncertainty of waiting for a donor heart remained a shadow in their lives, they had learned to live fully in the present, celebrating small victories and creating new traditions as a family. One crisp October afternoon, William sat in his home office on a video call with the Blake Enterprises board, finalizing the leadership restructuring that had been evolving over the past months. "The quarterly results confirm what we've been seeing," Michael Chen reported. The distributed leadership model is working. Revenue is up 12%, and the Meridian partnership has exceeded projections. In other words, another board member added, the company hasn't fallen apart without your daily presence, William. William smiled, detecting no malice in the observation. That was precisely the point of this experiment, to create a sustainable organization that doesn't depend on any single individual. Blake Enterprises needs to outlast all of us. The meeting concluded with unanimous approval of the new structure. Michael as CEO, William remaining as chairman with strategic oversight but minimal day-to-day involvement. As William closed his laptop, he heard the front door open and Sophie's excited voice echoing through the house. "We're home, and we brought pumpkins." He emerged from his office to find Sophie and Catherine in the entryway, surrounded by pumpkins of various sizes. Catherine's cheeks were flushed from the autumn air, her auburn hair tucked under a knit cap, looking healthier than she had in months. "The farmer's market had a special," Catherine explained with a laugh, "and someone couldn't decide which size she wanted." "We need at least 4, Sophie declared, struggling to lift a particularly large specimen. "One for each of us, and an extra one for practice." "Each of us?" William asked, raising an eyebrow at Catherine. "Apparently we're having a pumpkin carving contest," Catherine explained. "Emma's family does it every year, and now Sophie has decided it should be our tradition too." "I've never carved a pumpkin," William admitted, helping Sophie carry the largest pumpkin to the kitchen. Sophie looked at him with wide-eyed disbelief. "Never? Not even when you were little?" William shook his head. "My father didn't approve of such activities. He thought they were frivolous." Something in his tone must have conveyed more than he intended, because Catherine gave him a questioning look over Sophie's head. He rarely spoke of his childhood or his father, whose cold, demanding presence had shaped William's early understanding of manhood and success. "Well, it's never too late to learn," Catherine said lightly. "Sophie is an excellent teacher." Later that evening, the kitchen table was covered with newspaper, pumpkin seeds, and carving tools. Sophie directed the operation with exacting standards, insisting that William sketch his design before cutting and showing him how to scoop out the pumpkin's insides until it feels smooth like the inside of your cheek. "Not bad for a beginner," Catherine assessed, examining William's finished jack-o'-lantern with its precisely carved geometric pattern. "Very architectural." "It lacks the artistic flair of yours," William conceded, admiring Catherine's pumpkin with its intricate leaf design. "And it certainly can't compete with the masterpiece." He nodded towards Sophie's creation, a slightly lopsided but enthusiastic rendering of what appeared to be a cat with vampire teeth. "It's not a competition," Sophie corrected him seriously. "It's a tradition. That means everyone wins just by doing it together." Catherine caught William's eye over their daughter's head, and the look they shared contained volumes: amusement at Sophie's wisdom, gratitude for this simple moment of domestic joy, and something deeper that had been growing between them over the months of living together. After Sophie was in bed, William found Catherine on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket against the evening chill. He sat beside her, and she automatically shifted to make room, resting her head against his shoulder in a gesture that had become familiar and cherished. "Successful first pumpkin carving," Catherine murmured. "Another milestone in the continuing education of William Blake." "I have excellent teachers," he replied, putting his arm around her. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the moonlight cast shadows through the branches of the maple tree. "The board approved the restructuring today," William said eventually. "It's official. Michael is CEO, and I'm moving to a strategic role with limited day-to-day involvement." Catherine looked up at him. "How does it feel to let go of the reins after all these years?" "Surprisingly good," William admitted. "The company is thriving, and he searched for the right word. Content. More than content." William Blake voluntarily stepping back from power and finding contentment in pumpkin carving, Catherine teased gently. "Who would have believed it?" "Not the man I was 6 months ago," William agreed. He hesitated, then added more seriously, "Catherine, our lease on this house is up in 2 months." She tensed slightly beside him. "I know, I've been thinking about that." "So have I." William shifted to face her more directly. The arrangement we made was temporary, a solution for your recovery period. But nothing about how I feel about you and Sophie is temporary. Catherine's expression was guarded. What are you saying, William? I'm saying I don't want to go back to separate lives. I don't want to be a part-time father or see you only on designated days. He took her hand. I know it's fast by conventional standards, but nothing about our situation has been conventional. I love you, Catherine. I think I always did. Even 5 years ago, though I was too consumed with work to recognize it or act on it properly. Catherine's eyes glistened in the dim porch light. And now? Now I know what matters. You and Sophie are what matter. William reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. I'm not proposing, not yet. That would be too much, too soon. But this is a promise. He opened the box to reveal a simple silver key attached to a keychain with a small heart. Charm. I bought a house, not a rental, a permanent home. It's just a few blocks from Sophie's school, with a yard even bigger than this one, and a studio space that would be perfect for your research work. He hesitated. If you want it, if you want us, the house is in both our names. No pressure, no obligation, just an offer for a future together. Catherine stared at the key, then back at William, tears now flowing freely. You bought a house without telling me, without asking me what I might want in a home. William felt a moment of panic. Had he overstepped, assumed too much? There's a contingency clause. We can make changes or choose a different house entirely if you don't like it. I just wanted to show you I'm serious about building a life together. To his surprise, Catherine began to laugh through her tears. William Blake, the man who plans everything to the last detail, who never makes a move without calculating all possible outcomes, just made the grandest romantic gesture imaginable. While simultaneously hedging his bets with a contingency clause, she wiped at her eyes. It's so perfectly you. Is that good? William asked uncertainly. It's perfect, Catherine assured him, taking the key from the box. And yes, yes to the house, yes to building a life together, yes to us. William felt a wave of relief and joy so intense it nearly overwhelmed him. He pulled her close, kissing her with all the emotion he had once believed was a liability in business but now recognized as his greatest asset in life. When can we see it? Catherine asked when they finally parted. The house? Tomorrow, if you'd like. It's empty and ready whenever we are. William hesitated. There's one more thing you should know. I also bought the house next door. Catherine pulled back to look at him. 2 houses. Why would we need 2 houses? Not for us, William clarified, for Victoria. Victoria. Catherine's expression clouded. Your assistant. The one who intercepted my letter and kept you from knowing about Sophie for 5 years? Why would you buy her a house next door to ours? William shook his head. Not for her to live in, for her to manage. I've established a foundation, the Sophie Blake Foundation, to provide housing and support for single parents facing medical crises. The house next door will be the first of several such homes in the Boston area, offering reduced-cost housing and access to medical care for families in need. Victoria has agreed to leave Blake Enterprises and run the foundation as a form of atonement, I suppose. Catherine stared at him, clearly processing this unexpected information. You named a foundation after our daughter? It seemed fitting, William explained. Without Sophie, I might never have recognized what was missing from my life. And she's the one who taught me that sometimes the most important calculations aren't about profit margins or market share. They're about how much love we can give and receive. Catherine's expression softened. That's remarkably generous, William, both to the families who will benefit and to Victoria. It felt like the right thing to do, William said simply, converting something painful into something positive. The next day, William and Catherine took Sophie to see the new house after school. As they walked through the empty rooms, Sophie raced ahead, claiming the bedroom with the window seat and declaring the backyard perfect for at least 2 dogs. Dogs? William questioned, raising an eyebrow at Catherine. She's been campaigning for pets since she was 4, Catherine explained with a smile. I always said no because our apartment was too small and I worked too much. Seems like those excuses won't apply anymore. They ended up in the kitchen, a bright, open space with large windows overlooking the yard, where Sophie was now testing the strength of tree branches for potential climbing. "Happy?" William asked, watching Catherine as she explored the space. "Very," she confirmed, turning to him with a smile. "It feels right, William. All of it. You, me, Sophie, this house. Like pieces falling into place. Even though it's not what either of us planned." "Especially because it's not what we planned," Catherine replied. "The best things in life rarely are." The conversation was interrupted by Sophie bursting back into the kitchen. "Can we have a treehouse and a garden, and can I paint my room purple?" "Yes to the garden. We'll consider the treehouse and perhaps a purple accent wall rather than 4 purple walls," Catherine negotiated expertly. "Deal," Sophie agreed without hesitation. "When do we move in?" "Soon," William promised. "We have some paperwork to finalize, and we'll need to pack up our things from the rental house and your mother's apartment, and decide what to do with your penthouse," Catherine added. "Will you keep it?" William shook his head. "I've already listed it for sale. Everything I need is here now." 6 weeks later, on a snowy December evening, William stood in the doorway of Sophie's new bedroom, watching as Catherine tucked their daughter into bed beneath her purple-accented walls. The house around them was still in the organized chaos of moving, boxes half unpacked, furniture not quite in its final position, but it already felt more like home than any place William had ever lived. "One more story, please," Sophie negotiated, though her eyelids were already drooping. "Just a short one," Catherine agreed, selecting a book from the shelf. "Daddy, do you want to join us?" The word, so simple yet so profound, caught William by surprise. Though Sophie had gradually transitioned from calling him William to Dad over the past months, hearing Catherine refer to him that way made the reality of their family hit home with new force. He sat on the edge of Sophie's bed as Catherine began to read, their daughter nestled between them. Outside, snow fell softly, coating Cambridge in a blanket of white. Inside, warmth and contentment surrounded them like a protective bubble. Later, after Sophie had fallen asleep, William and Catherine retreated to the living room, where a fire, crackled in the fireplace and unpacked boxes, created an obstacle course to the sofa. Catherine curled against William's side, both of them exhausted but satisfied with the day's progress. "We got the call from Dr. Chen today," Catherine said quietly. "The latest tests show the heart sink is still functioning perfectly, but there's something else. My heart is actually showing signs of recovery." William sat up straighter. "Recovery? What does that mean exactly?" "It means the device is doing more than just supporting my heart. It's allowing it to heal. In some cases, patients with the heart sink have shown enough improvement that they no longer need a transplant. It's too soon to say for sure, but Dr. Chen is optimistic." The news was better than anything William could have hoped for. "That's incredible, Catherine." She nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It made me think about what Sophie said months ago in the hospital, that even if my heart was just borrowed for a while, what mattered was that we were together." "Wise beyond her years, our daughter," William observed. "She gets that from both of us, I think," Catherine replied. She reached for his hand. "William, whatever happens with my heart, whether I eventually need a transplant or not, I want you to know that this, what we've built together, is everything I could have wished for." William pulled her closer. "When I was a boy, my father told me that success was measured by achievements and acquisitions, that emotions were distractions, and attachments were liabilities. I built my entire life around those principles." "And now?" Catherine prompted gently. "Now I understand what real success is," William said, looking around at their half-unpacked living room, at the children's drawings already taped to the refrigerator, at the woman beside him who had given him a second chance at love and family. "It's not what you accumulate or achieve, it's who you become and who you love along the way." Catherine kissed him softly. "For a man who claims he's not good with emotions, you express them beautifully." From Sophie's bedroom came a small sound. Not quite a cry, but the restless noise of a child stirring in sleep. Both parents paused, listening, but the sound didn't repeat. "I still check on her at least twice a night," William admitted, "just to make sure she's breathing." Catherine laughed softly. "Welcome to parenthood. That never really goes away." "I wouldn't want it to," William realized. The constant awareness of Sophie, the perpetual low-level concern for her well-being, these weren't burdens, but manifestations of a love deeper than he had ever imagined possible. Outside, the snow continued to fall, transforming the world into something new and bright. Inside, William Blake held the woman he loved and listened for the soft breathing of their daughter down the hall, calculating the infinite value of this moment and every moment they would share in the future. His father had been wrong. Emotions weren't distractions from success. They were the very essence of it. And attachments weren't liabilities to be avoided, but the greatest assets a person could possess. The most important calculations weren't found in spreadsheets or profit margins, but in the simple arithmetic of family. One man plus one woman plus one little girl, adding up to something far greater than the sum of its parts. William had spent his life seeking permanence through achievements and acquisitions. Now he understood that the only true permanence came through love, not because love itself was unchanging, but because it grew and evolved, creating a continuity that transcended circumstances and time. As Catherine drifted to sleep against his shoulder, William reflected on Sophie's words from months ago in the hospital. "I discovered that it doesn't matter if Mum's heart is just borrowed for a while. The most important thing is that we're together. That makes each day last forever." In the quiet of their new home, with the woman he loved sleeping beside him and their daughter dreaming down the hall, William Blake finally understood what forever truly meant. It wasn't